So welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel. I'm very excited that my guest is a super talented actor. He is the legendary Nitin Ganatra. Thank you so much, Nitin, for joining me.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Pleasure to meet you.
Now, obviously, it's been a very, very weird time that we're in at the moment. How have you found lockdown? I mean, obviously it would have affected you work-wise, but how have you found the whole situation we find ourselves in?
It's been the most profound time in history, I think. I had to stop watching the news. I had to stop eventually just because there was so much fear going on, and it's been very tragic. Obviously, so many lives have been lost in all of this, and elderly people. That's the tragic thing about it is just the vulnerable people have been going, and that is a very worrying, frightening thing. But also, it's kind of brought out a lot of the good side in humanity. I've seen more and more old people stopping to chat. I started to, since lockdown, I would go have a very early morning walk and sit on a bench and just think for a bit, and I would get lots of people coming up and having a chat, and seeing dads who are normally working out training their kids and stuff like that, and puppies. I keep seeing puppies everywhere. There's been some good things, and for me personally, it forced me to stop, and it's only when you stop and realize how busy our lives are that you don't get to stop and live.
I know that obviously when it first kicked off back in sort of April time, it did. A lot of people were like, okay, this is very surreal. We don't know what's going to happen next. But it did, as a country, as a world, I presume, it brought everyone closer together, because you'd get people talking more often on Zoom calls, Skype calls. People would ring a neighbour just to check in on them. People were doing shopping for, elderly people. It did bring us closer together. So, I
still am. I'm still doing shopping for my neighbours. But yeah, it did bring people closer together. You're right. And, stopping for a chat, people talking longer, phone calls getting longer. I know that I was certainly guilty of having conversation through text, because I just don't have the time or the energy to talk, because I'm always rushing. But now phone calls are lasting an hour, and like the old days, where you kind of go, oh, people are really ringing for a chat. How are you? And instead of just delivering information by text.
And I also think that people genuinely do care about the answer. Sometimes in the past, I think people have been a bit guilty of, how are you? Oh, okay, that's great. And then you move on. Whereas now you're actually, so how are you? And then you're talking, and you're like, you want to know, and you want to look up, because obviously mental health is something that is also very important. And we need to look after each other, make sure that people are okay, because there are a lot of people out there that are struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have our struggles. We've all had struggles. I don't think there's anyone that hasn't gone through lockdown with a sense of fear, depression, just being told you're not allowed out, and luckily, I have a garden. If I'm on the fourth story of a 1-bedroom flat with 3 kids, I don't know what people would do. It's so, although I know that I've suffered from depression from it, I know that I've been fearful, and it's caused me a lot of anxiety. I'm pretty aware that there are a lot more people in worse situations than me.
I was going to say, I know when I was interviewing Tamsin Outhwaite, she used the term, which I've never thought of, that we're all on the Corona coaster. We're all riding the Corona coaster at the moment, which is just obviously, up, down, round, round. Everyone's on a different sort of path, really.
Yeah, and there are waves of anxiety. There are good days and there are bad days, and there are days when you just don't know why you're feeling this anxiety, and because life is not normal anymore. For me, one of the positive things has been, it just forced me to stop and reconnect with who I am. And I'm sure a lot of people going through the same thing, which is you just remember who you are. Just reconnect with somebody rather than the running around, rushing, and this world that we live in, which is all money based, which unfortunately that's the world that's been created with money, that we have to have it in order to survive. It becomes, your thoughts become a lot more profound about life, and is this what I want to spend my life doing, chasing all the time? So it's been interesting for me. It come face to face with a lot of big questions, and one of the biggest things has been I picked up a paintbrush after 18 years and started painting, which has been really therapeutic for me.
I mean, I know that, I've been, when I had a bit of spare time, I was doing clearing out rooms that looked a bit of a mess, and it just gives you that time to do things that otherwise just keep getting put off, and, I'll do that later. This is the time to do that job.
I did that. 2 weeks I did that. I went, okay, now I've done the garden, I've cleared everything out. What do I do now? I mean, and because I got kids, I had to create structure, and I obviously take to try and keep them busy, but once I've done all the decluttering and things like that, then you go, right, well, I've done that, and that's the weird thing. It's that moment of going, stop doing anything. Stop. You don't need to stop, just stop. And it's when you stop and you are just left with the thoughts in your head, then you're going to start dealing with stuff properly. You're going to really declutter this. And I can't say I've completely, arrived to a place where it's always a process. But I think my first love has always been art. And that's all I ever wanted to do. And after I hit that point of just stopping, I found myself picking up a paintbrush and then painting again, and I'd forgotten how to do it. It's all I ever did as a kid, and I was quite good. I'm not very good anymore, but to reconnect with that thing that I stopped, I put it away a long time ago, and that's been really good for me.
Now, in terms of obviously work for you, like many people, it just stops. I mean, were there any projects that you were involved in when lockdown hit, or were you quite, sort of between jobs at that point?
No, I was auditioning for jobs, and I didn't get them. So I hadn't. But then the lockdown happened. So I know a lot of people who are in a position where they did get really good jobs, and they're not happening. So I was kind of like, well, how would I feel? Do I feel low that I'm not working, or would I feel worse if I just got this great gig and now it can't happen? And I think that's even worse. I know a lot of people that have been, Tamsin, for example, was doing a play, signed up to do, she was in rehearsals because we went for a coffee when she told me she was doing it. And then suddenly for it to stop when you were so geared up for it and prepared as well, you'd done your homework, you'd prepped, and you'd done rehearsals, and then suddenly, no, we can't do it. That I think is harder. But obviously my industry's been hit. We all need to work. We all need to earn money. It's tricky because as actors, you can't be 2 meters apart all the time in a scene. So I'm sure there's lots of writers who are cutting out love scenes very, very quickly. Not that I would get that many love scenes at my age and with my looks. But I had to then stop thinking about work, I think. I mean, I had to just go, right, you know what, that the money you put aside for a rainy day, now's the time to use it because you're not going to work. So I'm getting by, but actually not working has been quite good for me. I was working a lot, and I was under a lot of stress, and I was exhausted. And rather than my body collapsing and me having a heart attack, I think the situation just kind of made it possible for me to stop. But you know, there's again, you know, how I'm seeing theatres struggling and closing down, and it's a big shame that this government just doesn't invest in the arts like other countries do. You know, that it's valuable for people's lives to have theatre, to have art. It's a bit shocking when we see the priority list of what's important to the government.
And I mean, I was talking the other day to Michelle Collins, and we were saying about how, I mean, obviously she's done a lot of work trying to make sure that the young people in the acting industry are supported. Obviously, we were talking about how, you know, some people have said that the arts are, you know, a luxury, whereas, you know, a lot of people are saying, and quite rightly so, that it's essential because it's great to sort of get people out there. You know, the theatres are obviously so important. It gives people, you know, I mean, especially if people are into, you know, if that's where they want to take their career, but also not necessarily just that. You've also got people who, you know, people like myself who, you know, no interest in acting themselves, but we love to just go and see that atmosphere and be in amongst the people and watch a good story being told.
Well, here's the thing. It's how you see life. You know, the government is run by big industry people, corporates. And those corporates are the minority of people who own a lot of the money, whereas the rest of the world, the majority of the world, exists on a community level. And storytelling is a community thing. You know, we've been doing it since we had language. You know, way back in the caves, round a fire. This is what happened to me. I went hunting today, and you'll never guess what happened. And it's not something you can put a price on, but it's something that's primal. It's something that's old. It's something that's universal throughout all cultures, whether it be sitting around singing a song or telling a story. It's very old. It's a very, very old tradition. But the problem is that the world we live in has prioritized big corporations making as much money as possible. And those big corporations, remember, are owned by a few people. The people who work under them are the normal people who are trying to make a living. And those people have that release. Those people that are working honestly, doing a day's work and coming home and supporting their family and just scraping by to pay the mortgage, they're the ones that get together and tell a good story. They're the ones that need it. When I say they, I mean we you know, our job is to tell those stories and entertain those people who have been at work all day. So it's a very, what's interesting about the world we're living is that we're beginning to understand the lack of balance, that lots of people have lost their jobs recently. But the question arises is that who's making all the money then? And we start to realize that it's only a handful of people making the money. The rest of us are all trying to earn a living and paying tax. And the world is just waking up, I think, to the fact that I'm getting quite profound here.
No, go for it. Go for
it. I think the world is waking up to the fact that do you want to work 9, 10, 12 hours a day for this little money and then be told what to do, what to think, you know, while other people make a lot more money by doing less. You know, I think the world is changing in quite a dramatic way. And I think lockdown is forcing people to ask these questions. When it comes to the arts, you'll miss it when it's gone. You don't realize what you've got while you've got it. And if you then squeeze the blood out of it, you're squeezing the blood out of community, and you're squeezing the blood out of people needing to share stories. That's what it's all about. We're just sharing stories, and that storytelling can be done with a bunch of people sitting in a garden 2 meters apart, or it can be done professionally with fancy lights and, you know, people who are paid to do that, which is, I'm one of them, you know. So it's a shame. It's a shame, but it's a shame because other countries do invest in the arts. They see it as relevant. This is about culture. It's not about corporations. It's about culture. The stories that your country and your community shares storytelling as a part of embracing and invigorating the culture that you live in. Everywhere you go in certain countries, there's art everywhere. Look at the buildings. It's beautiful. Instead of another high-rise block just going up because somebody's making a lot of money because they bought some land. It's a very strange world we're living in.
Completely. And one other thing that we're obviously missing at the moment, which was a big part of your life, was of course EastEnders, which is on its first ever break, which is very strange.
I know, never thought it would happen.
You were obviously there for about 10 years on and off. I mean, I was a few weeks back, I interviewed Nina, who is amazing, obviously played your on-screen wife. What are your memories of working with Nina and on the show? Because it obviously, you know, was a big part of your life and everyone loved Masood.
Yeah, I've always been surprised by the love that Masood gets. He, you know, it's very flattering. I get people from all walks of life, you know, all classes, all cultures. You know, I was stopped once by, I offered a seat. I was on the tube and I offered a seat to a little Chinese lady. And she just went, "Oh my God, you're Masood. I love you." And I was like, "Wow," you know. So, if I'm getting people from all different cultures being able to relate to this guy and like him and be interested in his journeys, it's a very flattering thing. It's a huge achievement. And of course, the Masood family was kind of one of the most successful Asian families on TV. You know, in TV history, let alone EastEnders history, and it's still living on. You know, we had some good times there, and we worked well together. You know, we were fast. We always, because Nina and I have known each other for many years. Before that, we'd worked together as well. So we had a shortcut to creating something. So it's something that I'm very proud of. It's something that I think I wish we'd taken Masood further. Because obviously after Nina left and, you know, the Masood family began to disperse a little bit, I thought, you know, there's still more to discover with this guy. I like characters, you know, as a professional actor, I study characters and I spent a long time with this guy. And when you start to really dig deep, you realize actually you can take this guy on so many journeys, but because the audience love him, they'll forgive him. You know, you can take Masood. He's a very interesting everyman character, and as an Asian actor, where you get, you know, white van man stopping me, going, "My missus says, why can't you be more like Masood?" I'm like, "Oh, really? She wants you to be like a Pakistani Muslim." And it's very flattering that he's a character that's crossed over so well into different people's lives. So I still think there's always, you know, I wish there'd been more of a journey for him.
I mean, obviously, last week we got to see the iconic episode of Saeed and Amira's wedding, which was obviously a big one. We got to really see Nina at her best. And obviously, you know, we got to see you as well, which, you know, did you get to rewatch it when it was on at the time?
I didn't know it was on.
Oh.
I didn't even know it was on. And then I saw on Twitter, it had been being talked about on Twitter, and I'd missed it all. So, but it was a New Year's episode, wasn't it? It was New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, or something like that. And I know it had got really high viewing figures at the time. And it was a story between Saeed, Christian, and Zainab. You know, that whole reveal. And that's where I spent most of my time doing what we called oblivious acting. I spent a long time I remember us cracking jokes where I think Masood didn't know Saeed's gay for a year after that. So in every scene, I had to pretend to be oblivious, and I just ran out of options. I just said, I can't just keep doing oblivious acting. And every scene I ever did with Masood looks uncertain, and I go, yeah, it was, but it was and it is an iconic episode, and it was very iconic for the show to do, a Pakistani Muslim gay love story.
Because I must admit, I had forgotten how that story ran out. Because I mean, for me, I was thinking surely not long after that was when everyone found out. But it ran for nearly 2 years, that storyline. Which
I did about 18 months of oblivious acting. I did 18 months of what? Oh, nothing. No, sorry, I thought somebody said Saeed was gay. Anyway, I'll go back to the Archibald. And what? Saeed's gay? Oh, sorry, my mistake. And I just remember finally the scene that happened was I walk into a room and find Saeed and Christian in bed together. That's how I found out, I think.
You can't really sort of misinterpret that.
And I think I went in and we rehearsed the scene, and at the end of the scene I went, Christian's gay? Just because I'd spent so long being the one guy in Albert Square that didn't know that his son was gay. But hey.
I mean, we did also saw on Twitter that Nina was teasing that, maybe you should go back. Would you go back with Nina? Would you love to go back to the show?
You know what? I love the character, and I've got happy memories of that guy and that family. And when the writing is really on it, it's such a joy to do. And when we all worked together, we were also creating stuff. We were also creating an energy. We were finding props. We were not improvising dialogue, but we would fill the scene with stuff, whether it be, hey, I've got an idea, you do this, I'll do that. And we were always being creative. And what's interesting about working on a show like EastEnders is that it is a very fast turnover. And so there's a real adrenaline kick where, if you're doing a movie, if you're doing a play, you'll spend 4 weeks rehearsing it. If you're doing a movie, you'll spend 6 hours on one scene. Whereas on EastEnders, you've got about 40 minutes. And there's a real buzz about that. There's something really exciting about making quick choices, like turning up going, right, okay, how can we make this scene work? Other people would just go, just say the lines. Well, but, we were never like that. And Nina and I worked together for years before that. So we were always creative. We were always trying stuff. And so I do miss that, I just never say never, I love Masood Ahmed. I still think he has yet to really be discovered. I don't think he was ever really a major player, and I would love him to be a major player. And between the giggling, we would get work done. I think once Nina and I got told off for laughing too much. That's true. We actually got told off for it. And how can you get told off for enjoying your work? I don't know.
And we must just briefly, obviously, touch upon the success that Hamish has obviously had since leaving the show. You must be so proud to see the work, obviously Tamwa, for those who aren't aware, but you must be so proud of the work that he's gone on to do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. He's doing really well. He's flying, and good for him. We met through very unusual circumstances. And it's a great little story, this. I was in a restaurant in Leicester with my family, And this girl comes up to me and says, "Hey, listen, my brother is a really big fan of yours. Could you do an autograph for him?" And I went, "Yeah." And she says, "He wants to be an actor. He's only 15, 16." And I wrote, "Oh, maybe we'll work together one day," or something. "Hope to work with you one day." And then what happened was, about 5 months later, something like that, I was doing a radio play with a studio audience. And at the interval, this guy comes up with his dad, this kid comes up with his dad and said, "Hey, you wrote an autograph for me, my sister, da, da, da." And I went, "Oh, pleasure to meet you." And I said, "I hope we work together one day." And he went, "Oh, great, that would be great." 6 months later, I go in for an audition for EastEnders, and he's there. And he ends up playing my son. So
that must be so strange, just how the universe worked out for it.
Yeah, it was an odd thing that we from one autograph that said, "Hey, we work together." Not that I don't claim any responsibility for it. But it is a nice story, isn't it?
I was going to say, I never knew that, so that's very interesting to know. Now, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Just before we go, though, is there any messages you'd like to give to anyone who's listening in hospital at the moment, who's obviously not having a great time of it?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a great public speaker, but if there is anything I want to say to people is that hang in there. Life is very, very strange. We just adapt and we keep going with it and stay positive, stay hopeful. And if you are feeling low, if you are feeling depressed, there is always someone to talk to. That's one of the biggest things I think that has been coming out with lockdown, is that you go and you grab somebody and say, "Listen, I need to talk to you." Just listen. That's all you need to do. Just listen. And I hope people who are suffering quietly do find somebody to talk to. So please take care of yourselves.
Thank you so much, Nitin. It's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, keep safe, and thank you again for your time.
Yeah, and listen, I know it's taken a long time to get this interview, and I'm really glad we did it.
It's been an absolute pleasure for me.
Yeah.